What's up, family? In this episode of Extended Cut, Petey and I dive into his message about the Father's Heart, Part 1. You don't want to miss this one, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Well, hey, family, we are back, and it has been a while. It's been a minute, just with like
a month plus. Probably.
Traveling and sick and all the craziness,
all the stuff.
Yeah, but Jesus is still moving. So
He is.
We are back, guys, and we have a really, really awesome one. You know, PD preached an amazing word this past week. The faithful father. You know, this is one of my favorite messages, and the way I first heard you preach it when you renamed it the faithful father instead of the prodigal son, and putting the emphasis on how God's seeking after his son in this. Like it always touched me. But like I said, I really think this was the best one that you've done. So
this was a different perspective or a different priority than I've ever talked about it or really even understood it. So we're in the midst of a mini series. We're still going through the book of Luke. We're in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 22, which is the first 2/3 of the story of the parable known as the prodigal son, or the faithful father, or the parable of the two sons. And there are lots of ways that it's described. Yeah. And so it was just a different priority this time. Yeah. So instead of really prioritizing the son's life and the mistakes that the son made, though it's important to acknowledge, made a decision to really focus on the priority of the father's heart for his son. Right. And, from the text, we see that the father, when the son was a long way off, the father ran out to greet the son, covering the distance between them in a way that would have been undignified for a man of any stature to do in that time. We see that the father covered the son with a robe and gave him a ring and sandals. And I think that's part of what we want to talk about today. And it's really just understanding the father's disposition towards his son, specifically in this passage, or the father's heart towards the outsider, the non-Christian, the person who's far from God, the person who's made so many mistakes they feel disqualified, the person who's run themselves into a gutter and doesn't realize it, the person who doesn't realize that you don't have to run to the gutter before you give your life to Jesus.
That was good when you said that. I was like, oh.
It's like, sometimes we wait for somebody to run into the gutter before we tell them about Jesus. And it's like, now we can put up a yield sign. We can tell them the road is out. They don't have to I saw these videos of people walking on ice, somebody sitting in the car, videotaping people slipping and falling on the street, and it's like, bro, you could tell them to not do it.
It's like, hey,
you just watch them crash.
It's a bad idea. Yeah. It's not going to end well for you.
This is going badly.
I tried.
Exactly. So anyway, that's where we are. Really excited about this coming week and the following week. We're going to talk about the party that they threw and God's love for parties. And we're going to talk about the older son and how there was more than one lost son in the family.
This one hit harder, I would say, than the other ones have. Okay. You said a couple of things, and we'll get to the robe and the ring and the sandals and everything like that first. But you said one thing, and I just would love for you to elaborate on that for everybody. You talked about settling for a servant's portion.
Oh, yeah. So the son is in this humiliating condition where to a Jewish person to have to feed pigs would have been insult on top of insult on top of insult. And he decides he's going to go back to his father's house, and he decides that it would be better to be a servant in his father's house. And so he returns with this elaborate speech that he's going to give his dad, where he's going to live this kind of bowed down servant's life, because at least he'll have square meals and he'll be in a safe environment. And the father offers him something far greater than that. He reestablishes the boy's sonship. And it's really beautiful, but sometimes it's easy to forget about the work required to be a son as opposed to being a servant. Yeah. So if the son came back and the father said, yeah, I'll only receive you as a servant, the part of the heart that is vulnerable never has to be exposed, right? The part of the heart that is tender and remorseful never has to be dealt with. You could just do the work on kind of a contract basis, and I do the work and you feed me. That's the end of the agreement. Yeah. But to be a son, you have to open yourself up to be loved and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And to be a son, you have to open up to also love. And that is something that does not exist in the servant master relationship. That would make it easier to be a servant. And so sometimes we're satisfied with the servant's portion, which is just the contract basis, like, the crumbs from the table, or the very little, or the payment that we were due. But a son gets more than what a son is due is far greater than what a servant is due for. But very often we settle for less than God would have us have as his sons and daughters.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I mean, and even when you said it, the thought that came to my mind was, where in my life am I afraid to be a son?
Oof. Yeah. Ouch.
It's just like, man, where in my life have I settled for the contractual, like you were talking about? And I think it's great that you pointed that out, because sometimes we feel like, oh, being in a contract, it's harder than being family and relate. And it's like, actually.
Yeah, because you can feel like you can walk away anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. And the set parameters, and it's like, I'm going to do this and they're going to do this. And if these things get violated, we don't have to do this.
Then
but family is violation. like really though, it's just like, how many times have we violated the expectations of a family member?
Yeah.
As a father, as a son, as an uncle, as a cousin, like, it's just like, man, this was the expectation for me, and I violated it.
Wow. Yeah.
Or on the other end, somebody's violated an expectation for us.
Yeah.
And I think really it is hard.
It is
to want to walk into that. It is scary to walk into
terrifying.
that, but it's so much greater.
There's so much, because the son, it's not just about the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it started about the stuff. That's what it started as, and it ends with unification and redemption.
Yeah.
And mercy and compassion, and those things aren't present in the servant relationship in the way that they are in the family relationship.
Yeah.
So it's scary.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to avoid.
How would you encourage somebody to walk into the family relationship, the son or the daughter
with
role?
Jesus?
With Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, the family relationship with Jesus. That's a great question. I think I would say this a couple of different ways. Having still raising 4 kids, I think about what it's like for me when they choose me, when they're vulnerable with me, and when they're honest with me. That means the world.
Yeah.
When they share their fears, and when they share their hopes, and when they want to be close to me, like when they choose to be close to me, it means the world to me. And I just have this sense that that's very much what God delights in from us as well. That we would take a physical, emotional, and spiritual position as a child by drawing near to him and being vulnerable, by being honest, by being authentic with him about our hopes and our desires, our longings, our pain, our discomfort, our anxiety, because he can handle, like, the difference is that, like, when my kids share those things with me, sometimes all I can do is meet them in it, and I don't have the power to resolve some of these things, but with Jesus, some of the things that we bring to him, I think he's going to resolve. And for the other things that he can't resolve, I think he enjoys and delights in drawing us close and being with us even in the midst of it.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's hard.
Yeah. No.
But that's hard. I mean, I remember. I mean, just in my own relationship with my dad, right? Especially as I growing into manhood, it was like a deliberate choice. It took deliberate choice to continue to be vulnerable to him.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I get that.
Right. Like
I totally get that.
It was deliberate, and it was awkward sometimes, because sometimes my dad didn't want it, and it was like I was being vulnerable, and my dad's like, "What the like that's not what I want from you right now," but it is what our Heavenly Father wants from us.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. Sorry I opened up so heavy off the jump.
Yeah, I mean, we're into it. I hope that resonates.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah,
I love it.
It's your fault. You said it. So
Yeah,
I just...
that's what I get. Okay, yeah. Oh, so the father runs out, and he greets his son, who's been away, with a kiss, an embrace, and then he sends the servants to go get the finest robe, the best robe in the house, a ring, and sandals.
Yeah.
And those three things the robe symbolizes the covering of sin, right? Because from a distance, there's going to be no distinction between the son who never left and the son who was gone.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any distinction between the father and the son who had left. But when people look at that family, they're just going to see the righteousness of the father. And so it is for us. When we choose to put on the robe of salvation that Jesus offers us through his death, burial, and resurrection, we put on a robe that when the Father looks at us, he just sees the righteousness of Jesus. And unfortunately, we spend a lot of time trying to make our own clothes, like Adam and Eve and the fig leaves. Like we just always put together fig leaves, trying to put together a better covering than Jesus could make for us.
And I mean, that was the other hard thing you mentioned in the message. We often spend time trying to clean the robe that we're wearing. Versus accepting the one that Jesus gives us.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
So constantly trying to better ourselves instead of being bettered by Jesus, right? So nobody comes to Jesus pure or clean or righteous.
Yeah.
We're only righteous because of who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for us. But we still fall into this temptation where it's like, we try and get by on the merit of our thought life, or we try and get by on the merit of our contribution to society or to our church, or on the merit of our giving, on the merit of our service, on the merit of our participation. And we try and scrub out the stains and the blemishes of our sinful past and even sometimes present. Not sometimes present. Like the sin that crouches at the door. We try and rub it out, but at best we just smear it and we end up looking like a Dalmatian.
Yeah.
Right. Like we got a Dalmatian jacket because we're just smudging it around instead of putting on afresh the finest, cleanest robe that Jesus has to offer us to cover our sin.
That's good. Yeah.
Is that what it sounded like to you on Sunday?
No, that's exactly what it sounded like to me on Sunday. It just was like, I just was thinking about what my robe looks like.
Yeah.
It's just like, dag. And it's the same question. I mean, and I think this is something that I've learned to do during messages, instead of just saying, oh, that's a good thing. It's really asking the question, hey, where is that in my life?
That's great listening.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that we don't actually teach well enough. We even tried to record Wayne, and we were, but that's something that honestly I think what you're describing is something that needs to be taught.
Yeah.
Because we don't. Sermons are different, right? So you didn't just hear like a challenge, like a gauntlet drop, but you heard something and you grabbed onto it, and you're like, this requires deeper consideration. And that active listening, that participation is better than observation is activated in that moment. And you're like, oh my goodness, I can do some business with Jesus. Maybe we're not going to get all the business done during the time of the sermon or even in the time of the follow-up song. But you've got 7 days in a week. Right?
And I mean, you are alive and you're going to continue living and you can just continue seeking Jesus. It's not like a time frame on it, even with that. Like you don't even like, oh, I got to deal with this thing within the 7 days, because realistically, it might take more than that.
Oh my gosh, there are these ideas that you run into where you're like, oh, this is going to take some time.
Yeah,
and sometimes you think something's going to be real quick, and then you realize 3 years later you're still trying to overcome or like let Jesus transform a way of thinking or being or living or acting.
That's really real.
So
again, I'm thinking this is going to be the broken record.
Okay,
Here comes words today. How do we choose the robe that Jesus gave us?
Well, so what's amazing is God has given us people who can help us put on the robe, right? Like I love that the Father sent the servants to go get the robe. And they brought it, and we get to present the robe to one another all the time. Like we should continually be presenting the robe of salvation to one another over and over and over and over as Christians to one another and also to the world. Like, hey, here's a robe of salvation. Jesus wants to cover all that. Yeah. Right? And so built into this moment, it's not just the Father and the Son. It's the Father, the Son, and the servants. And I know that we're sons, and he didn't send the sons to do it, but so the metaphor breaks. But there are other people involved in this. There's a community involved in it, and there's a community celebration that follows this moment. Yeah. And so there's community all throughout this interaction between the Father and his Son that they're acting within and would have been assumed by the listeners at that time. Yeah. So there's following Jesus. There's letting him put the robe on us. There's with the people of God, that the people of God would help place the robe on us and continually bring us back into that. And then the mission of God is really represented by the sandals. Yeah. But also when you realize that putting the robe on people is the mission. Yeah. It kind of ties into itself.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, when the son's got the sandal, the robe, and the ring being put on him, he's being brought back into the mission of the family as well. So he's being brought back into the people, but with a family. It's like, we used to say this thing at my brother's karate school used to say it, super corny line. It was like, a family that kicks together sticks together.
Hey, look, it's real, man.
So like a family on mission, a family that's on the same going in the same direction. He was being brought into
the robe, and then we've got the ring. The ring symbolizes authority. Yep. So, I mean, how brave of the Father to give the Son authority right away. Yeah. Like, golly, like what's he going to do with this authority? Yeah. He's already taken his inheritance once. Fraud is closer to some people than others, but the Father's like, no, I'm bringing you all the way in because I've covered you. I'm giving you this ring and I'm giving you certain authority. And as believers, man, we've got authority. We've got authority to pursue righteousness, to say no to sin. We have authority to set people free, to cast out demons. Like that's a real thing that probably is on different podcast, but we have authority, and we act like we don't. We act like all the agency belongs to the world, and like everything is out of our control. But God has given us authority as His sons and daughters, and we need to start walking in that authority. No, not just So here's a rant that may or may not make it. No. So God has given us authority, but as children of God, we so often abdicate the authority that we've got to a political party, or we abdicate the responsibility that we have and the authority that we have to an organization, a city organization, or
this one's gonna hurt. We give it to the pastor.
Oh, you give it to the pastor. Yes, exactly the problem.
Oh, that'll be for the pastors to do. They'll figure
and then we're like, and the church is so dysfunctional. Yeah. It's like if we walked in the authority. And here's the thing about the authority that He gives us is the authority that we have cannot exceed the authority of the bounds of the authority that we've been given. Yeah. Yeah, and the authority that He's given us is made clear in the Great Commission. He said, go and baptize believers in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, because all authority belongs to Him. Yeah,
right? and He's with us.
All the days of our life. Sandals are mission. The Father's saying, hey, we can only imagine the condition of a son's sandals after the kind of journey that's described, after the kind of season of life and a famine and everything else that this...
He was ratchet, bro.
Yeah.
He was doing all of the things.
Yeah. So if he even had shoes, they had to be replaced. And the Father's saying, it's time to take up my mission. Wow. Kind of like, are you done?
That's awesome.
Are you done yet?
Yeah. Like he looked at me like that before. I don't. I feel targeted. I feel targeted right now.
Are you done? Are you done yet? Okay. Are you done yet? Are we good?
I still feel it.
Can we? Regardless. Can we move forward now? Are you ready to join me in this? Yeah. Let's go. Right. The Father's. It's like you've got this and you've got this. Now come with me, and we're gonna go some places together. And I just think that's absolutely beautiful and wonderful, and really reflects the heart of the Father for us. What kind of the Son was expecting this extraordinary rejection to meet Him. Yeah. He was expecting to not be brought in, and it was the Father's heart all along to bring Him all the way back in. And he had no idea. I just wonder how many people are staying away from Jesus because they fear that God's intent towards them is to fully reject them. And that's what we're going to talk about this Sunday. So I don't want to get too far ahead.
No.
Because I'm excited about this.
It's just like, there was a, and you talking about authority is what originally, just kind of gave me the thought. And we don't talk about the fact that we have authority enough.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that's Christians.
Some churches hyper prioritize it, and then the rest of us don't talk about it at all.
Yeah, so it's like I remember it was a youth pastors conference, and they were talking about this guy was talking about a student that he had, and this was the student that was a total knucklehead, didn't listen to during the sermons, was playing games, flicking rubber bands, the whole shebang. But they went to a camp, and he gave that student a bit of authority. He said, "You know what? You're going to be a counselor. You're going to be a junior counselor."
Okay.
And just being trusted with that.
Wow. Changed everything.
Unlocked something in that kid. Gave his life to Jesus that week at camp. But this is the thing. That kid was the popular kid at his school.
Okay.
So their youth group went from 40 to 400 over the next 3 weeks.
That's amazing.
So it's like understanding that we have this gift and really receiving the joy of it.
Yeah.
Can really unlock something with us to take us to, it's just like, oh no, wait. No, I'm a part of this. I can go out and have these conversations. I don't have to wait for the pastor.
Yeah.
I don't have to wait for X, Y, and Z. I don't have to wait for, I can have this conversation right now.
Come on. That's so good.
You want to give your life to Jesus right now at a Starbucks, at a wherever. It's like, dude, we could do this.
Yeah.
Like right here, right now. Let's go.
That's awesome.
So I just think it's,
I mean, the idea of authority, man. This is the Reformation. That was the point of the Reformation in the 1500s, the priesthood of the believers, and somehow we fall back to a place where it's forfeited again. And man, what would be possible?
I think it falls back
if we took ownership of that.
Yeah, I think it also falls back to what we were talking about in the beginning. It's sonship versus servantship.
Yeah.
Like, we fall back to being servants and we don't have authority. And I think it's not just not having...
Because those servants aren't walking around with a ring.
Exactly, and it's not just not having authority, because with authority comes responsibility as well, too.
Yeah.
So it's like, I hate to quote Spider-Man. No,
it was great.
With great power comes great responsibility, and I think we often hide from that or feel like we're going to get crushed by it, but now we're feeling like a servant with authority, not a son who's totally loved regardless with authority.
Wow. You know what we didn't talk about? There's one thing we didn't talk about yet, and I didn't really talk about it in the sermon. We kind of did. Or we didn't talk about it here, and I alluded to it in the sermon, is the work of being a son on the back end. Yeah. So like the father welcomes the son, he gives him all the things, and then throws a massive party. But the next day, the son was going to step into a new life where he would have to relearn what it means to be a member of the house. Right? Like he's gonna have to break old habits. He's gonna have to get set free from things. He's gonna have to rethink his priorities, and you better believe those priorities are gonna be challenged. If not right away, at some point again, and he's going to have to choose to stay home. And sometimes that's the work of sanctification and discipleship, right? Like, is learning to think differently about our lives, and learning to think differently about the Father, and learning to think differently about what it means to be a part of the family. And so there is a next day. He's got to wake up into the family and not run away when things get hard, and not run away when he's bored or feels like he deserves more, or he wants something different. He's going to have to choose to stay in the family. And for some of us, the challenge isn't coming back. The challenge is staying once we've come back.
That's good. What are some things we could do to stay? And we'll end with that.
Hey, this is where the big three are. Yeah.
We need to make a T-shirt. The big three.
The big three. Hey, the big three. The way we stay is that we fully enter in. That we really make sure that we're not looking for some sort of result, but we're really delighting in following Jesus. because sometimes the result doesn't match our expectation, and then we'll quit.
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure that we're actually going after Jesus, and we actually want him and what he has for us more than what we want for ourselves. Right? So following Jesus, and the way that we best follow Jesus is...
I think I know this one. With God's people.
Yeah.
I think I know. And I think, wait. I'm reading your mind. And then we do it on God's mission.
On God's mission. And there's nothing like... So I met with a church planter earlier today. He's planting in downtown Denver, and great man. Really excited about his church.
Yeah.
I hope they excel, that they exceed in everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so excited about it. But as he was describing it, as they're stepping into this journey, I was reminded of the journey that we're on. And that's part of the beauty of being in the mission, is that as we stay on the mission, we're reminded of the mission, and we're spurred back into the mission.
Yeah.
And so it just it's like a babushka doll of mission that just keeps on giving.
Let's go. You haven't made the babushka doll reference
been
in a
minute.
while.
It's been a minute.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, those Russian nesting dolls.
I love
Look
it.
'em up.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
But it more of like an infinite one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
That would be...
I mean, for some people, infuriating. But I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah,
I kind of want one. I want to make it just to use AI to make one.
Good. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was going to be like, Godspeed.
I love it. Well, family, thank you guys for joining us. We love you as always. And we'll see you at the next episode.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you all so much for joining us in this episode. It feels so good to be back, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.